It's Media Center Ukraine, Odesa. Hello. We are having the briefing with Kasper Kannosto, president of the NGO, Your Finnish Friends. Kasper is with us online. Kasper, hello. How do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you fine, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being with us. And the first question is, you've been to Ukraine not so long time ago. So can you tell us a little bit about your travel and about how Finnish volunteers help Ukraine during the war?
Finnish volunteers in Ukraine work in various tasks. We can see them work in the Legion, and then with more special tasks, working behind lines of the enemy. And I just came back 3 days ago, and I met Finnish volunteers from different groups, and I can say that they are doing great work, at least from what I see, and what I've heard, that there is a lot of experience that the Finnish volunteers already have, first from conscription service in Finland, and then that there are people that have other military experience from professional tasks abroad. And we visited the west, of course, and Kyiv, but then we went to Kramatorsk to meet the Finnish volunteers, and we drove to Mykolaiv, and from Odesa then back home to Finland. And we delivered a lot of equipment, what is needed, and humanitarian stuff on the side. We always try to do our part with filling the car with much stuff as possible, so we can get things that are needed there.
You mentioned Finnish volunteers who are actually fighting for Ukraine at the moment in the Foreign Legion and in other military squadrons, right?
Yes.
What did they tell you? What were you talking about? What are they telling you about Ukrainian army, about a Russian army, about their part in the military activities?
There are, of course, a lot of things that I cannot say due to operational security, and because most of our conversations are full confidential, and because we operate on a trust and need to know basis. So I try to not ask too much, but what I know is that in Finland our mentality has always been that if there would be an attack, it would be from the east, meaning Russia. And Finland, for me, example, I'm 26 years old, so my grandmother was one of them who were forced to leave Karelia when Russia took it. So Finland automatically remembers and has always been prepared for a Russian possible attack, or like for a possible scenario where Russia would be the attacker. We are not looking for, we are not thinking there would be anyone else than Russia. So the Finnish training has always been prepared for possible attacks from the east. So there has always been this readiness, and I think like every Finn in Ukraine has this readiness and has always been mentally ready to defend Finland. And now when the chance came to defend Ukraine, when the Finnish volunteers went there, the same mentality was there, just the situation and the ground was different. And they work with various tasks and they do great work. And what they are saying with the Ukrainian military is you have to ask them directly, because I think there are a lot of things that the Finnish military practices that could be used in the Ukrainian military, everything from bureaucracy and so wise, which I think could be made smoother. Because in Finland we have in our own military, there is clearly one in the regiment that takes care of all the bureaucracy part, and then it reduces the stress of the individual soldier of how much stuff they have to do with the bureaucracy part. So I think that is one thing that would be great to be seen in the Ukrainian military too, because of course I have not been a volunteer in the Ukrainian military myself, but based on a lot of things I see and hear, I think that is one thing that the Finnish military could export to Ukraine immediately. But it takes a lot of time.
Surely. And you said you're only 26, and the Finnish volunteers you were visiting are approximately your age. They are quite young too.
There are young and there are old and there are people in the middle age. It's not, I would maybe say more on the younger side. There are the more people, but then the older they are, I would say there is a lot more military experience from missions abroad that they are then using in this situation.
What I mean is that actually your grandmother suffered because of Russian aggression, but not you, not any other young person which is now fighting for Ukraine in Ukrainian army, haven't suffered directly Russian aggression. But despite that, they were ready to go and join Ukrainian army.
Yes, so like if you think about it, I'm 26. That means that I'm the third generation from my grandmother. So and that it takes a couple to 3 generations to forget trauma in your family. So then the older the people are, the better they remember how maybe their parents or grandmother were in the war, or how they were affected, or like grandparents maybe fought in the war. So it takes a lot of time for the Finnish people to forget this trauma. But then when Russia keeps up the aggression, there will always be a constant reminder of what can happen if we don't act.
I just wanted to tell you a little detail if you're interested. I remember that in 2014 when Russia invaded Ukraine, taking Crimea, and some military started thinking about what we are doing, what we are going to do about it, and they found out that actually the main military plans were about possible war between Ukraine and Romania in 2014, which is now absolutely impossible at the moment, surely. But before Russian invasion in 2014, we were preparing military, as we found out, we were preparing for Romanian aggression, maybe between us because of Snake Island, maybe because of something else. But Russian aggression was a surprise for Ukrainian military, but it wasn't for your people, as I understood.
I think Finland is a very practical country when it comes to handling military threats. So instead of maybe working too much on like an emotional basis, we just prepare for the worst, and then we have ease and we can, find calmness and maybe relax because we know we are prepared for the worst. So Finland, for example, here in Helsinki, where I am from and where I grew up, there is a lot of tunnels. There is a lot of bases, for example, for people and so on. So it's always been there, and the Finnish conscription service is very good, and they train regularly too after that. So there is this very practical way of always being prepared for the worst, which would then be Russia in our case. So then we can find calmness in our daily life after that. And I think like even if we had a lot of like, what is like this Finlandization, we can call it, where we self-censorship because of maybe being there was some sympathies maybe towards Russia, but there was mainly a lot of being scared of like what is the worst. That this was during the time of Soviet Union, so it was even bigger at the time. So, and in the time of Cold War, it was maybe easier to not say anything that makes Russia or the Kremlin mad. So, but still always we were ready with the conscription service and so. But in general, the political sphere was very silent. But then the more Russia was being Russia, the more open then Finland became towards talking about it with their real names. But still, Finland has always been prepared, even if it hasn't looked like it maybe for everyone.
And in the end, it was a big step for your country to join North Atlantic Treaty Organization, not so long time ago, a few months ago only, after the full-scale invasion.
Yeah, and I think that was already in the works, a lot with the background work with, for example, NATO standardized weapons and training, a lot of international joint military trainings. And then when the situation needed it, Finland and the Finnish people decided that now it's time to join NATO because the threat is clear and this is what we need for security. And I think when Finland joined NATO, the conversations opened a lot more about Russia, what Russia can do, because now we hopefully don't have to think about too much how Russia could counter-react to our statements, because now there is less anxiety when we know that we are part of NATO.
And Kasper, can you tell us a little bit what was the mission of your organization and your trip here to Ukraine? It wasn't only a visit to Finnish military volunteers. You also said you had some humanitarian issues to solve. So can you tell us a little bit about that, about your trip to Mykolaiv, for example?
So what we do all the time is we all the time talk with people inside Ukraine, like what is needed and where it's needed. Then we fundraise, and then we find where to purchase these things that are needed. So this trip, we talked a lot with Finnish volunteers and what they could need. So it was gas masks, boots, NVGs. And then when we got these boots and gas masks to the people, we sent it to the civilians. Heal Ukraine Fund is one who took over and then sent it to the fire department. And then the gas masks went to the military use. And now we are just waiting for reports that like how they like the gas masks, are they good, and so that we know that these are something that is needed more of or less of, you know. So we try to pursue for quality and instead of quantity, because we don't want to have a reputation of just sending something that is not needed. So we constantly try to talk with Ukrainian NGOs. For example, Heal Ukraine Fund is a new good friend. They seem to do tremendous work. And then we worked with Javelin organization in Mykolaiv. And
what's the title what's the title of organization Mykolaiv? Can you tell us a little one more time, please?
Javelin.
Javelin. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, go on, please.
So when the dam exploded, we wanted to do something, but our first thought was that it's not smart for us to go with our cars with people that don't speak Ukrainian into Kherson and try to figure out what to do. So then we connected with Ukrainians and like talked with people, with one Yasia who helps animals every day. She does great work, and I asked her like, hey, Yasia, like there is something that we need to do, and I think the best thing to do is now to connect with an Ukrainian NGO that works in Kherson. So then we came with this, let's call it flood fundraising, 48 hours. And then we managed to fundraise 20,000 euros in Finland, and then we bought the stuff from within Ukraine to this organization, and then they delivered it to Kherson. So I think that's something that organizations could do more of, that instead of maybe always thinking that it's the best for them to go there in place. And then if they feel like they don't know what to do, maybe connect with the Ukrainian organization to know what is really needed and how they can fundraise within their own home country to then buy the things already inside Ukraine, because there is a lot of equipment that is already inside Ukraine. So I think it would save time and a lot of diesel if people would fundraise in their own home and then own country, and then buy this equipment from inside Ukraine, because that would give you tax money too.
Yeah. One of journalists who is watching the press conference online, he sent me a question about the motivation of Finnish volunteers who joined Ukrainian army. What do they tell you about their motivation? Why they are ready to risk their lives and their health fighting here Russian army?
I think in general, what they have said publicly in interviews, and so I can draw the conclusion that we want to do, in general, Finns want to do the right thing. And I think there is some subjective opinion too about Russia that just kicks us in the right direction, which is to go and help Ukraine and defend Ukraine. But with the soldiers especially, I would say that they just feel that this is the right thing to do. I think this is best to ask them directly, because I cannot talk, I'm not a soldier myself, so I cannot speak for them 100%, but my understanding is that it's just about doing the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you for your help to Ukraine, and thank for attending this online briefing. I hope next time you're here in Ukraine, you'll find time and possibility to join us here face to face. Thank you.
100%. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a briefing of Finnish volunteer who helps Ukraine and Finnish volunteers fighting in Ukrainian army. Our next briefing is going to happen at 2:15. It's going to be dedicated about the situation at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the occupied city of Energodar. We are going to have the mayor of the occupied city and a journalist investigator who made a big article about how Russian army tortured those who was working on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Stay with us online or offline.